Hey guys, welcome to another episode. Today we're going to be talking about amplifiers, specifically stereo amplifiers under a lakh of rupees that I recommend. Similarly to what we did with the previous video, the turntables video, I've based my assessment on a bunch of criteria, including things like wattage, inputs, does it have a preamp, does it have a sub out, the overall build quality, etc. If you want sort of technical know-how and a bit of a primer as to what constitutes a good amplifier, things like impedance and definitions about the general lingo around stereo amplifiers, you can find a nice blog that I've written whose link is in the description below. With that being said, let's get started. My first pick is the Marantz PM6007. It is by far the most sold integrated amplifier at the revolverclub.com. It's about 45 watts at 8 ohms and 60 watts at 4 ohms, which means it can power a very large band of speakers, both bookshelf as well as floor stander. It has a built-in preamp. It's got the ability to hook up a sub out if you need a little extra bass and you've paired them up with bookshelves. The drawbacks with the 6007 is that it's got no wireless inputs. So if you need to stream stuff via, say, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, you're going to have to add a separate dongle. The major benefit of the 6007 is that it's a very clean sounding amp, will mate well with most speakers out there. And as far as I'm concerned, there's really nothing in the market that can touch it at that particular price. So a great spot to start off, specifically if you're the sort of person who's going to be listening to maybe just a turntable and doesn't do a lot of wireless streaming. Next up is the PM8006, which is the bigger, beefier brother of the PM6007. Operating at 70 watts at 8 ohms and 100 watts at 4 ohms. It can power basically any speaker out there. A great place to start for somebody who has maybe higher end floor standers or higher end bookshelves. Again, the biggest drawback with the 8006 is that it doesn't have any wireless connectivity. So again, it's missing Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It does have a preamp, it does have a headphone in, and it does have the ability to hook up a subwoofer. I think that if you've got speakers that are maybe above a lakh of rupees, the 8006 is something that I would look into, simply because that extra power will definitely deliver greater performance. The analogy that I use when it comes to power on an amp is along the lines of having a bigger engine on a car. A lot of the time it doesn't make much of a difference, specifically in city travel, but when you're out on the highway and you want to cruise, a bigger engine always sort of helps the driving experience. I think it's the same thing with amplifiers. A lot of the time you may not need that little extra power, but if you want to see your speakers sing a little and drive a little effortlessly, then that's really where the extra weight sort of kicks in. The 8006 is priced anywhere between, say, 75 and 85 grand currently in the market. At that price point, it is a steal. I think it's considerably cheaper than you would even get it abroad. So definitely the way to go if you've sort of gone beyond sort of entry-level speakers and you want a serious audiophile amp. Next up is the 7000N, again from Marantz. At this point, you're probably wondering if this is a Marantz list. It is not. It just happens to be that most value for money amplifiers under the budget of 1 lakh happen to generally be Marantz, primarily because of the excellent performance, great reliability, and amazing after sales. In the greater scheme of things, as part of your hi-fi system, if something was to go wrong tomorrow, it would most likely be your amplifier. And so having a backup team like Marantz provides you with some semblance of sort of peace of mind. The 7000N is a great option because it is obviously an analog bass, so it's 60 watts per channel at 8 ohms, but it also has a fully functional digital section, meaning you can stream via Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, you could hook up a laptop, etc. If you're the sort of person who's going to be doing a lot of streaming via phone, laptop, or computer, I think that the 7000N makes a lot of sense. In addition, it's great value. It'll typically be priced at about 85, maybe 90 grand, which is cheaper again than you could get it abroad. So from a value money perspective, it's a great investment. The overall build when it comes to Marantz is exceptional. So whether it's the 6007, the 8006 or the 7000N, you're not going to get a flimsy piece of equipment at home. So I guess I'll end it by saying that if your primary consumption is going to be a lot of streaming, but you do want the ability to maybe use a turntable because it does have a phono input, or attach a subwoofer because it's got a pre-out, or even hook up a set of headphones because it's got a headphone in. The 7000N has you covered from all directions and will pair with basically any speaker out there. Next up, we have the Denon PMA-600NE. This is a recommendation specifically, I feel, for people considering picking up or needing the Marantz PM6007. The benefit that the Denon has over the 6007 is that it comes with Bluetooth streaming stock. So for those who need all the functionality and the performance that the 6007 has, but needs sort of some kind of wireless connectivity default, the 600NE has you covered. It has a similar wattage rating to the 6007. It's got a built-in preamp. It has the ability to connect a sub. It's got a headphone in. It's got basically everything else that you need, but also includes Bluetooth. So for those who need a system that's going to do a lot of, say, turntable playback, but also want the ability to stream via their phone, there's nothing else that I would look at besides the 600NE. It's priced between 45 and 50 grand. So it's a little more expensive than the 6007, which will typically retail for about 35. Another piece of interesting trivia for you guys to note is that Denon and Marantz are owned by the same company. So there's a very similar sound signature. I think in build quality, the Denon 600NE has a slight advantage. I prefer the general looks, and so I'll give a certain extra amount of points to the Denon for that reason. Next, we have the Rega Brio or Brio. It's about 50 watts at 8 ohms and about 75 watts at 6 ohms, I believe. The Rega Brio is my recommendation for those who want a pure analog setup. It has a typical British sounding sound. For those that have had experience with British amps, you'll understand what I'm referring to. It's a fairly no frills amp. It has a nice sort of industrial design. It has a headphone out. You cannot hook up a subwoofer to this. It has no pre-outs. It has a moving magnet phono stage, which means obviously you can connect a turntable fairly easily. This is again the amp that I would recommend to anybody looking to go purely analog. Pair it up with a decent set of high efficiency bookshelves or floor standers. So if that's the solution you need and wireless streaming is not really part of it, then there's nothing I would look past besides the Brio. Next up, we have my two bonus editions. Both bonus editions are a new type of amplifier that seems to be making waves in the market. They are referred to as stereo receivers. Now, in the good old days, a receiver essentially meant that it had built-in FM or AM. In today's day and age, stereo receivers typically mean they come with HDMI. So in the case of both the DRA800H from Denon as well as the NR1200 from Marantz, both these amplifiers provide 2 channels of power, but also come in with multiple HDMI inputs. And so what that means is that obviously you can connect it to your TV, and this is great for people who do a lot of streaming for music, maybe listen to music via a turntable because both of them come with built-in preamps, but also do a lot of movie watching. So if you're the sort of person who does a lot of movie watching or has a family that watches a lot of movies, these sort of amplifiers give you great value because your TV and movie watching experience will go up fairly dramatically. They're both priced about the same. You'll get them for between, I think, about 70 and 85 grand. So there's not much of a difference in terms of sort of pricing. I think the Marantz delivers slightly more power than the Denon. So if you need a little extra power, I would go in for the Marantz. However, if you're just powering, say, 2 relatively high efficiency bookshelves or floor standers, I'd go in for the Denon. So that's my list. You'll see that there's something for everybody. There are amps specifically for those looking strictly for turntable playback, for those looking for both digital as well as turntables, and for those looking for digital wireless streaming as well as the ability to connect to your TV via HDMI. Everything that we've spoken about can be found in the description in links. All I would say is that when you decide to pick up that first amplifier, don't skimp on the power if you've got larger speakers. Having a little extra power to drive speakers is always my general recommendation. So that's just something to think about. If you do have any questions or comments or suggestions, you can leave them in the comments below. Once again, we've also built a bit of a primer article that you can find in the links that will talk about the basic lingo behind what goes into a good amplifier, as well as stuff like what is a watt and what's high efficiency and those kinds of technical know-how. Thanks for being with me, and I hope to see you on the next episode.